about our event. Pay attention to the box and these things. It's unique artifacts. It's a jacket of Azovstal in this. It's a symbol of the will and the integrity of Ukraine in Mariupol. Struggle for against Russian combatant. I would like to represent our speakers with us. Dmitry Turchak, the Director of Directorate of Strategic Planning, Ministry of Infrastructure. Natalia Yemchenko, Director for Communication IPR SKM. Vitaly Belikov, Director of Department of Legal Issues, Ukrposhta. Svetoslav Rubar, Documentator of Tribunal for Putin from Center of Civil Freedom. Online, we have Czech Fall, Assistant of Trust Fund for Victims, the defense organization who saves from genocide and aggression and war crimes. A little bit later, we are waiting for Franziska Eckelmans, the director of this fund. With us also will be Rachel Abdul Salam, the expert for Secretary of Legal Data. Professor Charles Kotsubi, Executive Director for Center of Legal Education School of Pittsburgh Law University. With us will Natalia Grivnyak, the organizer of this forum, who will represent the company ENG Communication. I am Yulia Sushenko. I am a journalist, a member of the team of organizers. I would also like to be grateful for Congress Center for Parkovy for help to organize this event. For the beginning, we will address Mr. Eljakov with the estimation of the scale of the devastation in Ukraine, which links suffered more, if there are priorities for infrastructure innovation. I welcome all of the participants of our roundtable. I would like to start from the state. For now, I represent Ministry for Infrastructure. As you know, maybe some weeks ago, we were renamed and have more wide liabilities concerning for development and renovation of our infrastructure. Not only transport ones, but the social ones after terrible invasion of Russia Federation into our state. Let me be very briefly in statistic. It's a brief statistic, but it's emphasizing as our state suffered due to different estimation. I would like you to treat it with understanding as the cost of the amount of these losses, because it was counted in different ways. I think we will stipulate this terrible figure, but the loss of infrastructure is approximately 100 millions. How we provide and what we are doing to fix these losses? First of all, we made the register of the property. It's safe infrastructure will be by our central authorities of central governance and all civil properties due to the data of all of the losses which were made by the Russian Federation. I mean, this information which will be in this registry we are planning, this information will be not only the statistic meaning, but also can be used in criminal proceeding as a fixation of the fact of devastation. The register start to come into the force, and we step by step trying to work in this field. I think that due to some time we are able to give the statistic data and show how many documented in proper way due to the legislation of Ukraine the effects of devastation of our state. I will be very brief for you to understand, and will come through the figures for you to understand the scales. Due to the route, we generally it was losses including more 8 1,000 kilometers of outer roads and national roads. Approximately 10,000 communal roads, 3,000 village roads, 3,000 kilometers of bridges, 500,000 of bridges on the roads of local meaning, 50 units, and unfortunately you see the terrible shell, and this information is changing every day, and it's hard for me to say how many we have devastating in our car. Also suffered the private transport. Approximately 400 private automobiles were injured or lost during approximately 9 months of the war. Concerning the railway station household, approximately 1,200 ways, 63,000 of bridges, 16 of aviation airport. I think that representative of Ukrpochta will be more in detail for you to understand the reason of one enterprise, how much losses we have. It's only document since that materials which were in paper, since we would say that that ports are not working in proper way. You know, they have corn innovation which help us to fight for famine in the world, but I think we can use in full size our transport and logistic possibility. Also, it's connecting the possibility of our ports. We deny ports, but we understand that we have problems and there are losses, also losses of our state, losses of our infrastructure, and this since it more in detail. I just made some moments concerning the transport network. You can calculate on your own how much losses we have in utility services, how many enterprises, our private enterprises, our holdings business, in foreign business, who invested money. Also, Natalia will be more in details. Natalia will tell it more in details, but we had losses, and somebody must be responsible for this, but in principle not somebody but the state of Russia, and some personalities must be responsible for this. That is why I think that from our part we will make all of the effort to fix all of the losses, and the Ministry for Justice and legal specialists will work for reimbursement. I will say a little bit, and maybe it's not the topic of our event for today, but we will renovate all of this. The process of renovation will be opened, it will be under the report, and you will see all of this. And our ministry had already, and cabinet ministry has approved this provision. It will be transparent, and all of foreign partners and our business who paid taxes, we will see how these taxes will be spent, and this process will be emphasized. It will be transparent and open, and at the beginning of the year we will demonstrate the working element of the future renovation. Thank you. I was very brief, but I hope I have given the information that you will be able to use, and this information will be interesting for all of this. Thank you very much. The things that you talk about, we will come back to this issue during our meeting. And now I would like to give a floor for Natalia Yemchenko, and please take a floor and tell us how these events of 24th of February has influenced your company that you represent. For us, this war has started not at this date, but a little bit earlier, 8 years before, years 15, 14, 16. Step by step, we had annexation of our shares, and which were in the Crimea, Donetsk region, and we had special resources, a website where we, up to 24th of February, we weekly and then monthly, and then per quarter, we renovated the information. And it was not only the information about things that we have lost, but the information what we are doing with this. Our energetic, the tech was the first private company who claimed this to this state about the assets which were lost. And yeah, 2022, we were waiting for the result of the court decision. It's not the first priority, but we will finalize this issue. Actually, this history about reparations, the story about the things that Russia must pay to reimburse the losses, it's not only the matter of money, but the matter of philosophy in this issue. Actually, more than the war in Ukraine, it's a big issue. More than the war in Ukraine, more than the war, more than the full-scale invasion. It's going on since the year 2014. This is the issue that big, not even small, but small crimes must be punished. The absence of the punishment will create the illusion. I hope it is an illusion for the criminals that they can do everything. As a rule, of the situation with Russia, I'm pretty sure that the absence of the punishment, first of all, for the first Chechen campaign, for Syria, for the Georgia, I don't even tell about Africa, about Crimea, about Donbass, and the year 2014 made the sure that free of accountability, proper motivate them to do the things that they're doing now. And in the sense, as a punishment, this justice, the things that we made, this justice, the just things, it's not only instruments for reimbursement. As far as I understand that all of us are practical person, we have practical tasks, but first of all, it's against future, it's a prevention of future crimes. If the system of justice will do this, we could avoid this war. Instant justice is a thing that the history of reparations shows that it's still long process, that the fog of war must go away, everything must be finalized, all evidences must be collected, so on and so forth. But now we are living the century 21st, and they don't have any fogs of war. We have satellites which fix everything. There are a lot of ways to fix everything, from video camera to you generated content, and from our point of view, we must require from the global society, from the global system of justice, that things must be done right away, based on the fact, and to be very due to up to the persons who is committed. We have to know who had committed this crime, and he punished, and we must get from those persons who for guilty persons a reparation, and from Russian Federation. And this, no doubt, this our system of justice is too slow, it's too formalized, and unfortunately it doesn't go with this function. And I think this one of the greatest mission in Ukraine now, to press on the global system of justice and require accountability and justice today, and not to wait for anything. That is why we made some court for human rights. We have claims there, and then they come go away from the Russians, said that they had nothing to do with human rights, but there are periods from 6 months, like all of the crimes we on the court for human rights we claimed in summer, and we have collected we choose Mariupol case. It was because it's a very bloody devastation of a big city, and Europe didn't know anything since World War Second. We had the possibility, and we made big work for the fixation of these losses, and for such fixation on Mariupol, 300 people are working there. The separate team of 300 people who are dealing with fixation of the crime. It's more than thousands of pictures of documents, notification. We made a very complicated technical city. Nevertheless, the city is occupied, and we think that fixation of losses is a thing that everybody must do who have lost something, that something was stolen, the renovation of enterprises and the stolen production. Approximately our agro company Harvard have made approximately 300, and today we have only 200 products was stolen. I'm very happy that Mr. Dnipro has told that there is an agreement and some corn is possibly to be save and to send to the world, but unfortunately we don't have such steel, and the steel of steel is enormous, it's tremendous thing, and the thing that they steal not only steel, but they devastated the modern equipment and put them by the rebel station to use this equipment to produce more modern production, because now they cannot buy such Siemens equipment, and because European companies don't send them. But in effect, it's a very big story. It's a history of theft as a philosophy. They steal everything they can take. They think that it's a part of this war. It's a part of a great idea. It's not just to ruin Ukraine, but just to take everything away. They made this last century and the century before the last century. It's approximately during 300 years. It's justice. It's not only about reimbursement. It's not only the philosophic history. Justice, and it's only the possibility to renovate some historic justice during the latest 300 years. In parallel, they ruin enterprises and steal, as I told, that we claim to the Court for Human Rights from Mr. Akhmetov, but in parallel, our businesses will give the separate claims, and we in public and system, all of the businesses to fix the losses, estimate the losses, and go to the courts. Before this forum, we told that it's too early, there is no any decision of court, but we are pretty sure that not only big quantity of claims, there will be a great pressure not only from business but also state claims and also personal ones from the people. We are pretty sure that the system of justice will be more quickly. Actually, during 2 ways, we are big business. We invest our efforts and money to show how it must be. We think that it's our mission. We make it with the open code. We tell how we do it, but the way through the Court for Human Rights, we have the Ukrainian courts, where, as far as I understand, they will there are some legal basis, but also there is an international arbitrage for international courts concerning the losses of individuals and states. We have big work from a group of Ministry of Justice. We are contacting this contact group, and we are pretty sure that such 300 million of dollars which are under the arrest of all the investment of the central bank. It's Germany, who such states that we must walk, our state must walk in way, because I'm pretty sure that the fixation and estimation of the losses is a thing that we will do it in good quality. I'm pretty sure that we will come through the court. It will be enforcement will be the greatest time. How we can make Russia pay, and the state, the role state is tremendous, and we sense that we are partners of the state, but there are things that already were made by states. Yupas team, it's Mrs. Mudra, Mr. Kochkevsky, that is a very nice team. They do some fantastic, tremendous work. As I told, that it's a work. It's not only for Ukraine, not only for us. And it's not only for the Ukrainians in a whole, for global system of justice. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I have many questions a little bit later. Now we will give floor to Vitaly Belikov, who will tell us about losses of Ukrposhta. If when was taken, the plans were taken off, what kind of loss were there? What things were stolen from Ukrposhta? What have been changed? I know that you opened the renovated department on such territory which are free. What things did you see when you entered there? Colleagues, welcome all of you in the forum. First of all, I would like to say that the war exists in three spaces. It's a social space, a political field, and a legal field. More frequently, the estimation of the war is made from the social point of view, like event which is socially unacceptable thing. But from the legal point of view, it's war exists like processes, there's a regulation, since there are international conventions which regulate, and from the political point of view, war has one of the discussions like a fourth way of external policy. We understand that there's from 3 points, from local, social, and political. The war is not unacceptable. It's only from social point of things, but from political sense and legal sense, it's acceptable from way in the process. It exists. It's not possible to say that this not exist if it exists. War exists. It's not new thing for the society, for the mankind, and it has different bases. But impossible. But it's important to pay attention. That today, this war which going on in Ukraine, it's not a war in understanding of aggressive external policy of Russian Federation. It's a war which works for devastation of all of the values and tradition into scale in legal and political field before existing before this war. First of all, Russian has killed the trust for international treaties, because Russia was one of the signees of a guarantee of Ukrainian safety. When Ukraine cancelled to use nuclear weapons, this ruined the trust for international treaty. The second, that Russia, the understanding of the political agreements, that the war started like the special operation, as if here was some kind of criminals on the run or whatever. It's intrusion in sovereignty of Ukraine, and when troops of one state to another state, it's not acceptable, because in principle it cannot be acceptable. I would like to come back for social aspect, which is more acceptable from the society and understand for the wide mankind. Ukrposhta is a participant of all world post structure. It's a structure of United Nations. Ukrposhta represents part of United Nations when guarantees all rights for post exchange due to the second protocol of Convention of it's a guaranteed right as for medical aid, as a right of life. It's integral right for all persons due to the Convention of the all world post union. One of the participants is military administration, or from the point of view of political point of view, when we come back to the political issue of the war, states or structure will be admitted as the subject of post exchange, because it's for the category of the rights which must be bid for more. For many people, it's not acceptable that from point of view from the convention there are humanitarian medicine, education, liquidation of emergency situation, and also post activity. And this activity it's not like a collaboration, and people who provide the activity on the annex, they're not collaborant, even if they cooperate with the collaboration activity, because this activity guarantees to be the rights of people. But now we have some conflict of laws, because if you come to any relationship with a collaborant, you are a traitor. But from the social point of view, you must provide the rights of the people. For example, if in Ukraine we have a person who claim, for example, for some Russian official person in Russia, for example, in the territory of Russian Federation, this person must have a right to do this. But the situation which we have now doesn't give the possibility to do this. And Convention of United Nations is not being obeyed, because Russia ignores such rights for the post exchange. What the Russian Federation is doing? Let's come to the 15, when the territory of Ukraine has been annexed, and all of the property, for example, as the post exchange with the Crimea. Ukrposhta makes the ambition in the to provide the right of the citizen, not the subject of collaboration power of Russia and person. But Russia said yes, but it must be international post exchange. We understand that Russia does not admit the foreign Crimea as a foreign state, as we decide to organize the foreign exchange as the procedure.
And Russia first denied it, and from the second, well, they created so-called military obstacles, namely, say, infringing the confidence of postal lists in any post mail. That's why the history in Crimea that we got, say, we unfortunately we had no postal exchange from Ukraine to Crimea, but till February 24, we got this postal exchange with Russia, I mean from Ukrainian side, and by the order of Igor Smolensky, this exchange was stopped. But we wanted to do it in a social way, not having any legal relationship with this country, and we did it since we cannot provide the safety for our workers that who had to cross the frontiers of Russia, since this was really dangerous, since the Russia security service may infringe the rights of our workers and creating them dangerous situations. And so Ukrposhta, within the International Postal Unit, initiated the blockage of Russia from the membership in this International Postal Union, and we achieved to, first of all, to stop Russia's chairman in International Postal Union, and the such behavior that neglecting the civil rights, the human rights from the side of Russia received two, let's say, assessments, and since Russia acted really on the opposite of all the legal rules and aspects, and namely with that Baltic countries also stopped the postal exchange with Russia, showing that one country cannot neglect human rights and to be a member of a humanitarian world, just given the to interpret its own rights in a way they want, meaning to annex everything they want or to behave the way they want. So we are really in a civilized world, since if some rights are violated, so the punishment should be inevitable, same as accountability. And well, I would like to say that we suffered from really immense losses as real estate, transport, but what is most is the human losses. Unfortunately, I can't give the exact numbers of the workers killed. Just to give you the example, when the Russian tank ruled over the civilians, living people staying in this vehicle, so the tank ran over the vehicle, the way destroying the vehicle and killing the people that are inside. This is, I think, the absolutely unacceptable situation. And plus, this vehicle was marked Ukrposhta. All the workers inside were also wearing uniform, postal uniform, and I think this is not like the aggression. This is not civilized act, absolutely, because any civilized country never makes war against civilians. I mean, like medical workers, postal workers, and killing them just for good. And well, there's a third law of Newton, so the force has the same counter force, and I think this should be used to the activities and deeds of Russia and Russian Federation. I mean, to use this counter force against them. And I think the Europe is kind of shows inertia in taking any decision or solution, in particular concerning some real estate or immobility or any assets. But my opinion, just an opinion, the regular human being, I think that the world and Europe should really apply in the unprecedented principle of really fair reaction towards such deeds as Russia produced and showed, and as it was done to Germany after the Second World War, like prohibiting having any army, any weapon, not only having but also developing and producing, and just taking into consideration the fact that my colleagues already voiced, um, well, using the golden reserves of Russia, and to provide the reparation or reimbursement to Ukraine of launching the civil reconstruction projects, since all our population, all our civilians received such a big psychological trauma that will prevent them from normal living till the end of their lives. I just recall a movie from my childhood when a boy came to a summer camp and there were like fireworks, but so he was so frightened, thinking that it's just an explosion, a bomb explosion. Our children react the same way when during the sounds of the fireworks. I saw myself when being to Poland, our refugee children reacting in a way like they really fall down to the ground, trying to hide themselves because they think that this is an explosion, and they have to hide from bomb shelling. And with that, it's really, I don't think that is any difference in calculating really the final amounts of the losses or damages received from Russia. Russia should be condemned as a real aggressor in a political format. Legal and economical format should not exist. It can be a territory, some political union, but no state can be let's say can be in the world. And this is like coronavirus. If being freed, it will be uncontrolled and destroy the whole world, since even the civilians, the regular people in Russia, if they don't support Putin's policy, they really don't understand what's being now in the world, what's happening now. And there's not only direct losses that were done to Ukraine should be compensated, but also all the social and psychological potential that we experience this loss. As Ukrainian people say, any activity should be punished. I would like to ask whether or not we have with us Charles Kotzebue. Are you with us? We welcome you.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you.
To introduce you our guests. В наших папках є стаття, яка називається «Основа верховенства права. Києву потрібна судова реформа».
We have an article that's on the backbone of the rule of law and the need for a Kyiv Reconstruction Court. It's telling about the reform of the successful renovation or renaissance of the country after the war. And namely, Professor Charles Kotzebue is a co-author of this article, and while he is expressing this opinion in his work, and says that the reconstruction of the country, I mean, the Ukraine, includes the establishing the courts, I mean, international court type courts that will create benefits for Ukrainian business as well. So our esteemed professor is with us now, and I think that he can speak in details about his vision of the situation. Please.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay? I'll assume that you can.
Yes, we hear you.
Great. I'm a professor at the University of Pittsburgh School of Law and Durham Law School in the UK, where I teach courses on international law, international investment arbitration, and international human rights. I'm unique because I'm both an academic and a practitioner. Before becoming a professor, I was a partner at Jones Day in Washington, D.C., where I spent 20 years suing sovereign states when they violated international law. Holding states accountable, you could say, is my life's work. And before I get started into the points of my article, I wanted to say one thing, and it's about universities, and in particular mine. University of Pittsburgh has a long history in Ukraine on account of there being so many Ukrainian immigrants in Pittsburgh. And I just wanted to say that I had the distinct honor this year of admitting, fully funding, hosting, and teaching an entire class of Ukrainian law students this year. And I can say that they are among the most amazing students and individuals I've ever met. With every crisis, there's an opportunity. And I will say, this is a story we're going to see playing out. These young lawyers will be returning to Ukraine with a remarkable global education and outlook. And they're the ones who are really going to be moving the country forward. So I just wanted to say that to get started. And I want to make two interconnected observations that dovetail with what has already been discussed here today. And these come from my areas of expertise. So I want to first talk about international law and reparations very briefly. And I want to offer a bit of cautious optimism from an international law professor like myself. There are avenues available to hold Russia legally accountable. We live in a remarkable era where international law can be brought to bear by private parties against sovereign states. Never before in human history has it been possible, but it is today. It may not be exactly what we want. It may not stop imminent missile attacks. It may not heal literal wounds, but these avenues do exist. A few examples. I am involved in a UK litigation and possibly an eventual US litigation against paramilitary organizations like Wagner and other state-owned entities of Russia. There are billions in claims under bilateral investment treaties just waiting to be filed by Ukrainian businesses against Russia, and I'm advising many of these clients. The European Court of Human Rights remains available for individual claims. These courts and tribunals can't fix everything, but the last time there was a war of this size in Europe, these mechanisms simply did exist. We can achieve adjudicated justice for what is happening now in Ukraine. So what is everyone waiting for? What is holding it back? Like many things in business, money. Arbitrators and institutions need to be paid. And while some of the world's largest law firms are willing to work at very cut rates to sue Russia right now, claims still cost money, whether it comes from crowdfunding or charities or third-party hedge funds or governments or the claimants themselves. Now, I can say, because I'm at the epicenter of this, the quickest way to energize all this with a lightning bolt would be for the Western countries to unlock Russian assets and create a fund to satisfy judgments and awards. Claimants then won't be forced to risk good money to chase bad money. Investors will flood into this space with vigor, funding a global campaign of lawfare against Russia. So as we're thinking about establishing a fund to compensate victims of Russian aggression, we need to be thinking about pairing that fund with the many mechanisms of international law that lead to an adjudicated resolution of that compensation, which we have at our fingertips right now. So the point of my article I want to shift to very briefly as well. So as we talk about money and investments rushing into the space, we need to be thinking further ahead about Ukraine's post-war legal structure. I've heard it said several times in this forum just today that rebuilding Ukraine is going to require billions of dollars. And much of that money is going to come from private foreign investment, a lot of it Western foreign investment. One thing I can say after advising companies in investing abroad over the past 20 years, that quality foreign investment requires a healthy investment climate in the host state. And before committing to any post-conflict country, multinational corporations and foreign aid agencies or foreign governments will need to know that their contractual rights will be respected in that country, that they will have access to a functioning judicial system staffed by competent and impartial judges, and that local judgments will be enforced abroad. Without this bare minimum of due process, the investors that will come will either demand high margins to cover their risk, or they will not come at all. We all want to build a new democracy in Ukraine and not seed a new oligarchy. So what needs to be thought about? What needs to be considered? The tension between the reality on the ground in Ukraine right now and the needs of foreign investors could be alleviated through the creation of a specialized reconstruction court with specific but limited jurisdiction over the sorts of international commercial matters that will be critical to reconstruction. Specialized commercial courts have emerged in various domestic jurisdictions around the world over the past few decades, from Amsterdam to Frankfurt to Shanghai to Singapore. These courts create and provide domestic and foreign businesses with a specific judicial option that is not arbitration offshore to resolve commercial disputes. When properly established and promoted, these courts can be a very positive attribute in evaluating a country's investment in business climate, and innovations can be built in. Perhaps oversight mechanisms in the judicial selection, or the limited use of traveling judges, all of which can build confidence in the local judicial system and build ties between Ukraine and the West. I'm here to say on both of these points I've talked about, now is the time to think big, to integrate the judicial system in Ukraine and these compensation needs that Ukraine has with the broader world, with international law and international processes, and reform with vigor. And judicial reform has to be among the reforms we're thinking of. Thanks for inviting me here today. I wish I could have been there in person. I look forward to the day when I soon can be there in person. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and of course we will have a block of questions from the participants to one each other. Now I would like to give a floor Svetoslav Ruban. We talk a lot, all of you reminded us that the documentation of devastation factors. So I talk only about Mariupol 300, but my question is about in general about the aid from organization, non-governmental organization, how it's important both for you and directly for you, how you help for business, the state, maybe. How this process is going on, the process of fixation. A good evening of the participants. I am the commentator of initiative from Tribunal for Putin, from Center for civil society was the first organization who was his mobile group for documentation of war crimes in Donetsk and Republic of Crimea. Today, our team, besides the documentation of criminal cases, also work over the creation of special tribunal for Putin, Lukashenko, and the military governance of Russian Federation, and correspondingly for all people who obey to the orders, who has blood on their hands of Ukrainians. After full invasion of Russian Federation, the response of non-governmental organization was the creation of global initiative Tribunal of Putin. It's a brief name, but the full name was to ruin the circle of the absence of punishment. As Natalia has told us, that the military crimes are the main methods of war of Russian Federation, and it's going on today at the territory of our motherland, of our Ukraine, and central of together with Kharkiv, Helsinki for human rights, kept some initiators of creation of such initiative, and for today this initiative works for all regions in Ukraine. It's the first range of organization because all region has a local law defense organization which deal with documentation of military crimes, because besides of laws we had murders of people, we have violence disappear, we have torture, and this correspondingly violence. It's violence, also sexual crimes, and the alienation of property, and if we will pay attention to the figures, I would pay attention because today we approximately 3,000 of losses among people, the people who fall after the shelling, the fixed factors, more than 21st shelling and bombing correspondingly, and 1,627 of historical moments, education and art correspondingly. In our activity, we have a Rome statute. Correspondingly, we qualify the crimes due to this statute. If you will see the objects which are due to the statistics under the attacks, this directly educational institution, houses, and we have plenty of episodes which with household activity. It's shops where people around their business and pay attention. 974 infrastructure objects for life support objects. The process which collects of such data is made through different stages. First of all, it's intelligence, which also information coming from open sources, which is come as initial, and our specialists come with the mobile groups and some partners like representatives of Kharkiv group. They have possibility to come with the investigation authorities to come for fixation of this crime. I would ask you to scan this QR code, and due to this QR code you will be able to come to the website of our initiative. a TFP or QAs of an initiative. Now you can see it for our international partners. We have translation in 7 languages because here we launch all the information which is kept in the base databases. We have special software created, and for today it's fixed more than 27,000 of episodes of military crimes. If you will see, it's a 27,402. We have the local location. You see the map where you make all of the war crimes, and all person can detailize it correspondingly. Due to the concrete street, concrete house. Here's a renovation in the mode of due to the statistics, due to the real mode. You see the losses among the people, about attack on the objects, and correspondingly the statistics due to the legal qualification. And for today we have different feedback ways, because we have people come abroad and becomes the we have our partners who face on these episodes on the basis of these episodes, which were documented by our specialists. And now coming back to the people, because people are the force of this process. We made a training for the journalists for documentation, and they come to the sites. They can make verified episodes on this basis. Everybody can make come onto the training and come into this fixation, because our main goal is to come to the real justice and to bring those guilty person to the responsibility. And the necessary elements of such justice is a reimbursement of such losses, which both for state and for private companies, and correspondingly to the ordinary citizens. Thank you. Thank you. You told that 50 cases are already in the court. It is during this year or during the year 2014. This from the moment of full invasion moment. It's during this year, and some cases from the year 2014. Do you have stories? Are you able to tell us about the stories when you would say people fight for the justice and had such reimbursement? And this is very good question. But our focus is on documentation of these events which taken place during the full invasion. I hear that many organizations dealing with documentation, and for me, I don't know, from my part, I think that it's different actions in effect. How do you think? It's or you work with such a single front, and there are some and you exchange of data, make some common events with another partners, organizations, businesses. It's a very nice question, really. During process of documentation, there are many independent lawyers, specialists, journalists, and, for example, coalition of 5 mornings, one more initiative which deal with this question. This general prosecutors created a good internet resource is been created, which the information can be given through this. There is an intergovernmental platform about collection of the evidences for protection and representative of Ukraine in European Court for Human Rights, and that is why the question of systematization of such data, optimization, and directly use of this is for today it's up to date, but still we cooperate both with prosecutory and with the partners of organization. We deal with international advocacy and this summit of OSCE, which together with the partners we invited diploma specialists, and we provide such campaign about the situation which take part in Ukraine. We have cooperation, but some moments call for some standardization in this process. Okay, as far as I understand, this platform which Turchak is faced upon this to unify all of the participants. I will say that as for me, maybe our civil societies have some good initiative which have focus on advocacy of Ukraine, of our legal rights, and for all to see the losses that we have. And for legal questions, it's good to work out the system. It's our colleagues from SE working with legal companies, as Ministry of Justice will work, and we will collect our register of our property, and it will be documented. But this initiative, it's wider. It's what it's about crimes, criminal against state, against humanity, and our register will not show how many raped and ruined life. And this initiative will focus for all of the terrible scene of the war. We have different goals and tasks, different focuses, I understand, and we just help each other. You see, you collect us a different person together because we don't repeat each other. We just make this folk full of such more full. Svetoslav, you wanted to say something? I would like to add, because we have some field groups who come for the physician and make interview of the sufferer and witnesses. And one of the questions that they made, it's for the evaluation of the losses. It's correspondent was made. People who with the form with the fact about this crime, they have possibility to have such information in this initiative. Tribunal for Putin is has the biggest basis for such cases. 27,471 episodes was fixed. I see on the connection here the assistance of transfer for victims. We see them connected. They hear us. If there are no connection, so maybe I will ask Mr. Maybe you have some questions to our guests. You can come to me. You can come to me to do it better in such. Introduce yourself. Alexei Maxim. I'm a partner of a legal company without advertising. I have concrete question also for the representative from Ministry for Infrastructure. I am very glad to have the same idea that aggressor must be responsible in full way. And I will say about some simple things. He must pay everything everything. The war can be finalized when the last penny will be paid. In this context, the big problem appear for the for people, the evaluation of such losses. As for me, as a profile legal specialist, I have business, I have some evaluation from the business point of view, but all of these things, the citizen doesn't have this. A citizen don't pay for balance of their property, and the evaluation of the losses of the citizen, it's a very problematic thing, and the prerogative and the of the ministry, of your ministry, is working out of methodology of such evaluation of such losses of citizens. We are, as a member of such a big business association, American Chamber, it was a proposal for such methodology, and unfortunately, as far as I understand, we were not heard. And the questions are very simple, because there is no any normal methodology to evaluate the for mobile property, which was in immobile property. Now we choose the criminalistics way. They bring us a receipt, but it's not. It's unreal. Every penny which will be forgiven to the aggressor, which will not be submitted to the aggressor, it's investment into the war. Not in concrete in this war, but in the war as it is. As you mentioned, this is the forgiven for the aggressor, which will stimulate another aggressor for same actions. We given the same proposal for all of involvement for international evaluators. There are possibility how it's possible to evaluate without such without receipts. Besides, not only loss of the property must be evaluated, but the evaluations of such people who lost their house and they are without house in such months and maybe years still when they rebuild, they will have the same losses. It's the same. We would say the same analog that business will evaluate their losses from point of view of business house. It generates this income. The same house, and they also generate some positive things for the people. And my concrete question is, let us see widen to this evaluation, because now I see people who work with the methodology, they are close to such approach, which has our criminalistics, and all our policemen will say, please give us receipt. For me, as a person who help for other person, I make the claim to for human rights, for my neighbor, I also lost my house where I left when I was living with my wife and my 3 children. Were burned by the Russian, my next doors, and I recommend them to go to the court for human rights. And now the possibility appeared in Ukrainian courts after the latest practice of European court. I would like you to widen this question. I would like you to react for the letters, not only for the citizens, but for big business association who provides the big real ways to decide this, to solve this. All penny must be given back from the Russian. Thank you for the question. It's not more the question, it's a comment, but it's a very nice comment. But I don't understand about what kind of ministry you see, because we have united 2 of them. We worked out the methodology from Ministry of Regional. We worked out about the transport, and the things that I know now, work is going on, and I'm not sure that you were not heard, because the final result, we don't have such methodology, and today we worked out this project in the internal cooperation, you can make our numbers of your letters, because we have many questions, and the representatives of this governmental sector and the non-governmental sector face with the same problems. How you evaluate the losses? What kind of approaches do you have? And this problem not only for the citizens, both for government, business, commercial enterprises. That is why I make you sure that you will give us proposals. I will be able to see what things were taken into account, what things not, and take into account that we all of the official personnel of our provision must be coming out of the law in fact, and maybe your proposal call for more system decision. It's not the problem. We will initiate such draft law, which would help reduce some controversial or not regulated issues. That is why give us numbers or letters. I will react. I will react in personal contact for your proposal. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. Well, this is not a question, but rather I want to create a kind of discussion, or just to bring this issue to for some dispute. So I heard that three theses. The first is Mrs. Natalia mentioned that Russia should not exist as a state, first of all, and then that should be the compensation, the due compensation to our children, to our people. And the third thesis is that what Professor Kotzebue mentioned, that we cannot claim for, the compensation through the court, but also works through the investments, since if we just will rely on some compensation through the court or judicial system, this is kind of weak compensation, I would say, since everyone should make his home take messages. Us, businesses, public organs, public authorities, and also there should be an approach should be established. I would like say unprecedented approach should be in place, since the facts and evidences can be documented by public authorities, by businesses. When we're talking about the let's say prosecution, and also by civilians, people, I would rather discuss this item as esteemed professor mentioned, to create such court institutions that would provide for the compensation not only through the court, but first of all to create the opportunities for the big international investments by creating such specialized courts, as he mentioned. Well, we talk a lot about reconstruction. So I would not mention here just to bring back or get back what we lost, since only Mariupol shows the losses, such losses that cannot be simply let's say somehow recovered, since we have to rebuild totally. From zero. We have to rebuild the factory from zero, from greenfields, and we will I think that we will use some absolutely new approach to rebuild. We would build really a new, absolutely new factory, not just reconstruct the old one. And since I heard a lot that only 10% that will be given to reconstruction would be just for the, I mean, would come from reimbursement, but 90% would be the investments. So I heard it from the World Bank. I heard it on the majority events. In the talks, I mean, in the international talks. And first of all, I think that's the main thing is like to have a good planning. Yes, we start talking about future, but it's good since it's our vision, and we will not just reconstruct what we lost, and so not just building something temporary, since any temporary thing becomes permanent. So we should use not just repair, but really building from anew. And with I mean our what we do I mean, the investments what we do, the base is really a space one, because we invest really in such a big rate. It's and first of all, we have to talk about what should be the design as our power infrastructure. There's really a big activity in the investments that we should do. It should be namely a very intensively rethought. I mean, it needs good rethinking. First of all, the Marshall Plan. Well, apart from Marshall Plan, we have to do our homework, since we got in this process of Mariupol, and we have one thing about Mariupol. We have to create an absolutely new plan for Mariupol, and here, first of all, not to hurry up, and to develop a really good approach, since yes, we have a rather short time. For that we have only 1.5 years. Well, and as you mentioned that you mentioned just 6,000 of human losses, but it's not true. Only for now, what we discover, out of 30,000 people who worked in Mariupol, we conducted only 18,000 of them. So it's more than 10,000 people were perished. So it will be then I think that this figures we will discover will be really awful. Yes, and now we are in Kiev. We really suffer from blackouts, and every family lost these members, and even the whole family were lost. And we have here the representatives of the companies, of businesses, of people, of any NGOs, and of different forms of property. So, are we ready to invest in Russia's dismantling as a country? Are we ready to do this? Since it would be another approach to work with, to deal with what we will say as Russia after the war. Well, let me comment. We have such a saying: if you want really to give food to people. I mean, say just give him some food. But if you want these people not to starve anymore, so you have to teach them how to go fishing and so on. So that's why what Ukraine should receive, Ukraine should receive really is an unprecedented mechanism, for example, to manage to manage the assets of Russia. I mean, like oil and gas and so on. And then, well, when having this mechanism of managing the Russian assets, so Ukraine will really build up his potential and provide the Europe as well, the whole Europe and the whole world with the resources. That's why we have to turn and speak to Europe with the proposal, not only like with the reparation, like to compensate our losses, but first of all to give us the opportunity to govern those assets, I mean Russian assets, like also to take in there the SKM experience with the potential that they have, that we will provide with the resources to Europe and the whole world. Again, the courts they are really alone to seek to gather the evidences, to give up solutions, but businesses work much faster, and with that we don't infringe the world rule of law. And I think that this thought has its place to exist. Well, I really adore the lawyers, since so we're involved in the aggression of Russia since what you call it dismantling. Okay, we have already a case when we were working as investors in the power industry for Ukraine to really disconnect from Russia, or to disconnect all Ukrainian power grid from Russia. Well, this process was rather slow, and we tried to work independently and to pass winter peaks and summer peaks, and namely the winter peaks should start February 24th, and that Ukraine was disconnected from Russian grid, and so we started working absolutely autonomously till the end of March, and again, and also the March 16 Europe so invited Ukraine to the, let's say, European Energy Society. Well, but again, we worked absolutely independently, not 4 days as it was planned, but 24 days at first, and then it turned out like we were absolutely adequately prepared to work with Europe, yet this is the first story that again we work, and we have been working a lot in order to implement the European practices in Ukraine as now, and for us as big business, European integration, that is, yes, it's would not be easy one, but it's really a must, and this is really the direction and the area where we invest a lot, and we think that this is the investment in the disassemblage of Russia as well, since we really strike in the very heart of this country. And again, we have a charity fund, and we work with culture memory, and Yaroslav showed you the evidences of war, and we do our testimonials of people, I mean just a simple people. Again, one has to remember, really, we have to know how to remember, since the occupation that we live through now, it's the consequence of history of our country for the 300 years before, when Catherine II really changed the story of our country. And no, we have to get our history back. And since Russia is a myth, it's a myth artificially created, and why it's really a quality one, since it was written in Kiev Mohila Academy. So, but it's a history apart, and it was created yet in Kiev, and also since the roots again grow from Kiev, and then the institutions, we have to build in Ukraine the new institutions, and so these institutions should be stable, since they should work. They should work as also as an instrument for dismantling of Russian practices here in Ukraine. In case we really, if we don't succeed doing it here, so Russia will exist. Thank you, Roman.
Roman is a lecturer of business course of business school, IT specialist, agro specialist, and agro topic is more close to me. And nobody told about ecological, environmental concept of which is going on, which is like during the latest 9 years. As a consequence of invasion of Russian troops in Ukraine, but we have 1,000 but we don't talk about this sphere. We don't think about this sphere, even see about this money ecological effects as we have now. It will be felt by many generations. So this environmental influence that we will have now, it's not for reimbursement, not about some concrete amount. It's very difficult to describe because it's a files, forests, soil, water, contaminated for many generations, and for the future. And Vernadsky approach to due to the biosphere evaluation is very important for Putin. One more remark, and for me, like from Belgium education institution, it's for me it was interesting to hear the principle how your vision, how your way, how can you receive the control over the resources. For example, Gazprom company and Rosneft company have dependent for international institution, financial institution, on BlackRock, and how they, for you, the question for the lawyers, how they accept such idea of control, the money that corporative property for them. If you let me very briefly, we colleagues we mentioned, and especially that Ukraine must receive the not the direct losses, but the potential losses, which is the environmental nature, because the ecology is more widely used in the world, not like in nature, because ecology is a harmonic existence for people, resources, and plant world and all other things. And that is why my personal position, I think that colleague will think that potential must be calculated not only in square meters or whatever, some kind of property or some mobile property. Concerning the management for the resources, we understand that there are some investment funds, organization which put finger on the pulse of the projects of Russia. It's a main problem which exists because such institutions, let us be open, because such institutions are not happy about the position to ruin Russia as a political vision, because economic interests are always more for the social and political ones, because financial things influence for the policies, these funds, and owners must understand it's a possible contradiction of existence values to earn money. That is why they must understand that Ukraine must take the control over all of the resources and processes that are going on. It can be income gains due to some access payment. I mean that Ukraine cannot run off as the oil, but to have money for such from the organization we have over the oil is the territory of Russian Federation. As the more business works there and more Ukraine earns there, we don't need to have fish. We need fish road to go to fish. And so I will remind one more time, these resources which are controlled by Russia must be given for Ukraine through these payments or strategic resources which we over the control of Russia must become over the control and of the Ukrainian business or Ukraine, or some kind of world model in which Ukraine has a role to gain the income which Ukraine have. And separately, I would like to pay attention that maybe from the point of view of the world values, it's impossible such state as Russia can own and operate of the resources which have some which must belong to the world, because there are beautiful valuable stones which are present in Ukraine, in Russia. It's not the monopoly of operation of such resources for separate investment groups or Ukraine. All, including Ukraine, must have the access to such strategic things, more or less that such resources can create the massive devastating arm. Let Russia to do such things that Russia can do. It's approaches in all the world, and I would like to them one more time. You must be clearly see the thing. The position of Ukraine and Russia is not concerned with all economic group in the world. And the physically, I mean, stopping of the war, military action will start a new war for the resources of the Russia. Our Union states can be opposed us, because the control of the resources can lead on the social level. It not will be like felt on social level, but on the political and economic level, it will be very complicated. Our cabinet of ministry, our president, and our big production groups are getting prepared to such things. We remember the winner of World War II, and for us, Ukraine, as a part of this war, the member started the opposites. And you must understand that the finalizing of the war with the Russian Federation can be some driver of some economic process, and we must be ready to such process. And that is why Ukraine must understand that economy it's not energy which can be switch off or switch on. It's very, very complicated since politics, economic, and now we can only think about this and talk about this, but it's a work of big, of complicated question. It's not easy to answer this. The main thing, Ukraine must give so-called fish road, which will let Ukraine to exist and have the compensation of the potential. I would like to say that such mechanism is mechanism that Iraq had paid reparation to Kuwait. Thank you. Unfortunately, at the end, Franziska Eckelmans has is a director of Trust Fund for Victims. Franziska, do you hear us?
Can you hear me?
Yes, certainly, yes, we hear you.
All right.
Вітаємо вас у нашому.
We welcome you here in a friendly circle, and we would like to ask you, well, you have a lot of experience of talking to war victims, with just the ordinary people and businessmen, and so please tell us, how do you see, or whether do you see the perspective of for Ukraine to, let's say to cover the losses, to reimburse the losses, and somehow to find the justice?
Much for the question, and thank you for inviting me as the acting executive director of the Trust Fund for Victims at the International Criminal Court. I'm here today to provide indeed expertise and background from the only body actually that provides really reparations to victims, transformational reparations to victims in ICC situation countries. So perhaps to explain, to start with, what we are doing. So in the very first place, as you know, the prosecutor investigates also in Ukraine, the prosecutor of the International Criminal Court. And if there is at one point an accusation, then victims will participate in these proceedings. So it's very clear that at the International Criminal Court, victims can participate. So Ukrainians can participate in these proceedings. They will be registered by the ICC. And then if a person is convicted, then the court can also order reparations against that convicted person. And so normally the convicted person therefore needs to pay these reparations. To date, none of the convicted persons at the ICC had yet the means to pay for the reparations, which are really high reparation orders that try to assess very comprehensively what is the damage of the victims. So that is when the Trust Fund for Victims comes on the scene. We are designing implementation programs for victims. So we provide physical and psychological rehabilitation. We interact with victims to determine what is the symbolic reparation that they want. We really are interacting a lot with victims to hear the victims, how they can move forward with their lives and how can we make that happen. And we use our own funds to then complement the payment of the reparation awards. So that is the main function really of the Trust Fund for Victims. So we have been engaged in identifying victims, in verification of whether they are really victims of these crimes. We have a lot of expertise in that area. And we have been conducting all kinds of reparation programs for the victims. And if there is already a reparation program in the country, then we can also use that reparation program. And my understanding is that you are now here as well today, but also more generally in Ukraine, really thinking about establishing reparation mechanisms. Because basically Ukraine is requesting reparations from Russia. So that is the level of the states. And then Ukraine would like to put that money, actually, whichever way it comes in, into this reparation fund and make it possible that victims get reparations. From our experience, what really is important is to really focus on reparations looking into the future. So victims have suffered so much, they need to be able to move on with their lives and address the harm that they have suffered. Otherwise, they carry this harm with them for very many generations. So that is, I think, the most important effect of a reparation program, to really address the physical and psychological and provide socio-economic support to the victims. And so that is really the core of it. While given the amount of damage in every war that we have been acting on is so high, it's very difficult to really fully restitute or fully compensate the victims. So there it's probably more important for the country to establish again the basic needs. You know, you have, once it's calmer, basically, you want to reestablish the basic needs: electricity, water, houses, all of that. That is something that is actually primarily then the responsibility of the state, and perhaps not, so to say, a promise to every victim that they can rebuild everything as it was before. That's very rarely possible after such a destructive war. So I think that's important to perhaps also realize, is what is it that we can expect as a population from reparations. And I think the minimum you can expect is that you have all the psychological and physical support you need to overcome the trauma, and then also socioeconomic support to move on wherever the victims are then at this moment in their lives, so that they get another chance to continue their lives. I think that is really important as a first step. Should there be many more funds available, then of course there can be much more compensation and much more restitution. So that is very important, I think, to keep in mind from our perspective. So we are very happy to engage in any way, because we could also, because it's so important that Ukraine establishes these reparation mechanisms for all the victims, that we are happy to provide any kind of expertise in that process, so that in the end, this reparation mechanism can be used by any court and by any other mechanism as well, when convicted persons don't have enough means to actually give to the relevant victims the reparations. So I hope that answers also the question that you have asked. So it's really this focus on, there is a need to have reparations for the victims, and that's also generally acknowledged now internationally. You cannot have transitional justice without reparations. It's really an essential tool to bring peace and stability in the future, to allow people to move forward with their lives. I have not been able to hear everything what was before because I came in.
Дуже вам дякуємо за вашу експертизу.
Thank you very much for your expertise. This is quite useful for us. And I got a question on whether or not really we plan in Ukraine to establish such a fund, like trust fund, like for victims. Well, in just we have really just a few minutes to finish. Well, from the point of view of the organization that I work in, since we are Ministry of Infrastructure, this is kind of broader issue that should be resolved through some legal initiative or starting from Cabinet of Ministers, but just the regular people. I think that yes, we have to make any single effort in order to create such trust funds. As a colleague already mentioned, we have to well, what we can do is really to disconnect from Russia and really to manage the assets in a way like for our use. Yaroslav, do you have your own opinion? It's just some words for the final words. Well, thank you very much. I think in any case we have same also modeling the economic losses in order to assess them, since for example the factory that was destroyed was lost not as just a factory but also was lost in time. I mean, since it was not functioning for all this time after being destructed, and also to really to establish the joint understanding in order to among all the areas, I mean power, first of all to build a new future, and also to provide a compensation and to assess the needs for reparation. Also would like to say that Russia absolutely consciously destroys the Ukrainian economy. This is their policy, plus they absolutely consciously ruin the main industries of Ukraine. This is metallurgical industry, agrarian industry, also the infrastructure, since infrastructure in energy, power infrastructure, these are the main industries of Ukraine. And what we have to do in order to win in this war, it's not only to preserve our economy, this is the issue of survival, but also the maximum to modernize it at maximum after the victory. And I totally agree with Vitaly, since our victory is not just to win over in the military sense, but first of all to win over in a way to modernize our country, in a way to be really far, as much as possible, far from the new war, possibly. Well, in this war gave Ukraine a big chance to unite, since well, we know that the Ukrainians really quarrel among themselves. That this is kind of a democracy, but this is not good for in the time of war, since we have to unite in order to resolve bigger issues. And that's why I think that uniting altogether in a way of how to get the reparations from Russia is one and only alternative in order to get the maximum as a state and also the maximum as a people. And we talked a lot about justice of Ukraine, and also we have to focus on joining our efforts in there, and in order for the justice to be multidimensional, in a way of not just taking some one or two directions and focusing in, since it would be not a justice. Vitaly, your final word, just be short. I would like to thank all the participants to come here to participate Well, we talk about grief, we talk about pain, but I really will win. We will exist in the country, as economy, as a nation. We will exist in. We have a big potential, and we will really get it into reality. Thank you very much. Thank you for everyone who joined us online and offline on YouTube and Facebook. And I wish peace and all the best, in glory to military forces of Ukraine. Thank you.